By way of review, let me talk about an example that has often perplexed me. So one night, I was at home watching the Oscars, and John Travolta came out on stage. And he looked very smart and handsome, but he was surprised. And he looked around and he said, "Oh, no podium? Hand in pocket, angle body." And then he presented his lines about whatever movie he had to speak, and he did so in just the way you'd think that John Travolta would. He was very successful and confident and smart. Good for John Travolta. So I took the little lesson as a kind of article of faith. I've developed what I call the John Travolta stance. And the John Travolta stance is one foot a little ahead of the other, hand out front, other hand in pocket. Sometimes it's in front of my jacket, sometimes it's not. And this gives me a nice angle. It uses my shoulders effectively, so I seem deep, have depth, and it also gives us two basic focal points, my hand in front of me, and then my face, which you're focused on. It's useful to me because in developing and working with John Travolta's stance, I stopped rocking back and forth, and I stopped fidgeting with my hands. This one's anchored. It anchors on my hip, and this one is in front. So now, I use the John Travolta stance as an article of faith. I often lead like this. And if I have to read from a book, the left hand comes out, and the book is in my left hand, and I can read from the book and then focus my hand. If I have a script in this hand, it's much the same way. The John Travolta stance is a very firm foundation for me, particularly useful because I'm so short, I can't really stand behind the podium. No one can see me. My little head is bobbing just up above. It looks silly. So what perplexed me is that a graduate student I knew once came up to me as I was explaining how to use the John Travolta stance and said that her professor had told her never to stand angled like this and never to put her hand in the pocket. And this perplexed me because I know that professor, and she's a great presenter, really exceptional, probably better than me. She always says, stand straight with both hands forward. How could this be? The John Travolta stance is so comfortable for me. And as I thought about it, I came to realize that it's not the John Travolta stance. It's the fact that I've found something that works for me. I found it by mimicking someone that appears confident to me. But ultimately, I used it because it worked for me. The same is true for you. You may not find the John Travolta stance is useful at all. Indeed, many of my viewers are women, and they will probably not be wearing clothes that have pockets. So maybe they don't have the option of using a pocket. Maybe standing sideways looks odd. So they need to stand front. Or maybe someone's a lefty and that hand doesn't work at all. Or maybe it's just better to talk like this. So to review the whole module, to think about this a little bit, I've delivered in this module and the last one, formula after formula. I suggested that you should write out an outline in 3x3 grid. I suggested that really you should rehearse that outline in front of a mirror, rehearse that script, and then reverse outline it in a little black notebook. I've given you rules for marking scripts. But all these rules are only suggestions. Ultimately, we need to recall Raymond Chandler's advice. Exceed the formula. The formulas are only there to provide an initial structure, to get you thinking about your words and your body, your organizational principles and your main points. Really, the whole point is for you to exceed the formula, to go beyond it, to use it as a starting point that ultimately will guide you to find your own way. And if you find your own way, if you rehearse and modify so that whatever your stance is, it suits you and it allows you to overcome any of your survival reactions. If you do these things in your own way, you will be able to put passion in a bottle and unleash it at any time you want. Onwards.